I'm going down. I'm going down. 'Cause you ain't around, baby.
Well, there we are, Charles. Musical fade out.
There we go.
Sometimes it comes together. We're overcoming these little technical issues one at a time. And of course, somebody's going down.
Exactly.
We're going to have to find out who. Lovely to see you, Charles, on this Sunday. Summer is leaving us.
It's delightful to be here, and you know, at the HQ.
Yeah.
In the magical mixing room here.
And today, of course, you've selected yet again a classic film to be the theme for our show. I actually never saw the film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but we've certainly selected some bad and ugly people for today's poster. Of course, we've got Mr. Clinton, George Soros, and B-Rock.
The foot falter.
The foot falter, a dirty, lousy foot falter.
I mean, who cheats at a game?
Obviously him,
You know?
He cheats at everything. These guys, I think, are so used to cheating, Charles, that when they cheat and fail, they become indignant, as we've seen for the past 18 months.
Right, exactly. But now this is actually a pretty interesting period in American history. Most people don't know a lot about it, that there was, during the War of what do they call it? The War of Northern Aggression, also known as the Civil War. Actually, there was quite a bit of jockeying out west, over in the gold fields and silver mines, etc., where elements supporting either side were out trying to corral as much gold and silver as possible, and that happens to be in a period where some of my ancestors were actually out west finding gold.
I love it when you come up with these ancestral Ortel stories. Someday we will make a cartoon that every time you mention that, there'll be some ancient Ortel digging for gold or whatever.
Yeah, it was not an Ortel, but it's okay.
Doesn't matter. In my cartoon, it will be some ancient person with your head attached to them.
Oh boy, as opposed to this ancient person, with the head still attached for the moment.
Now, Charles, there's been a lot going on. There's a lot for us to cover. How's everything going with your Twitter shadow ban situation? I know that was a cause for concern for some time.
Well, I'm very dubious that the shadow ban has in theory been removed, because there was a period of time where I would get 50 to 100 followers every, let's say, 1 to 2 days, and I kind of been stuck. I was down maybe 400 or 500 lower, and then I'd been stuck right around 31.7, 31.8, and there's been a certain volume of circulation and the various things the various interviews I do with you, with print, radio, other sources. So it's a little bit, to me, suspicious that we're stuck here. You and I are both, I think, stuck, and it makes me wonder if Twitter hasn't come up with yet another devious way of tamping down on on who's getting followers and who isn't.
You've just caused me to realize, how have we not done an episode with that famous film, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels? We don't even need to change the name.
That's true, that's true.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it is a good one. And I think there's a sequel to that too, isn't there?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I think it's called the Obama administration.
Exactly. Charles, people, of course, can follow you on your website as well, charlesortel.com, and the easiest way to email you is to Google charlesortel.com, contact me, and that'll take people right to the contact page. You're definitely one of the most diligent email answerers that I'm aware of, better than me for sure.
Well, I try to, if somebody's going to take the time to send me an email, I try to answer it. I don't write a 20-page response typically, or even a paragraph response, but I do appreciate them, and I get a few every day, several every day, and we talked last time about how there is going to be a new report coming out on this site, and we haven't figured out quite yet which day we're going to do it. We're watching events very carefully in Washington, D.C. and around the world, and there's a lot of material to circulate. We're waiting for the various prosecutors inside this country, inside the various states, in the United States and around the world to actually get off their butts and do something here.
Exactly.
Because if you can, on the one hand, you've got the Paul Manafort approach to raiding homes and aggressively going, flipping people, providing all kinds of, aggressive threats against them, and not really giving them all that great by way of immunity deals or anything, versus the Hillary Clinton, matter / not really an investigation approach of letting all the guilty parties destroy evidence that's under subpoenas, let them meet together in the room with, in theory, prosecutors, investigators, give them every deference possible, decide that no matter what, they're not guilty, so we're just going through the motions. That contrast, that study in contrast is so outrageous that you're even beginning to, I think, see, perhaps reluctantly, people on the left look at this and say, no, wait a minute, this is just too far out there. You remember the old story that it was true, sadly, that in the American South, what they would do way back when, as they were trying to suppress black votes, they'd take an uneducated white person, they'd say, can you make your mark on this application? The guy would put an X. Okay, that's good, you're registered. And then to the black person, they'd say, can you please contrast the following Supreme Court decisions with this and that? You ask them ridiculous questions. Yeah, and that kind of, unfair administration of the law should stick in everybody's craw, because today it's being done by a bunch of people who, I think, led by Rat Rodenstein and other people in the Justice Department and legacy people in the FBI. They may or may not be, in theory, helping the Obama, Bush, Clinton, uniparty holdovers, legacy people inside the Justice Department. But there'll come a day when the pendulum's going to switch. And I think one of the things that truly does make this country special and in a positive way is that you used to be able to have confidence that the law would be administered fairly in the consideration of any potential criminal activity, and that you would be innocent, truly innocent, until proven guilty, that the government had an obligation to prove you guilty.
I like that you just said that people used to have confidence. Doesn't mean that actually happened, but at least people had the confidence that it would.
Yeah. But this is yet another triumph of the art department.
Thank you.
And I don't think we need to translate what fugly means, because it's the F word in combination with ugly.
Right. Yeah. And I think that these gentlemen's actions are what I find most repulsive about them. It's amazing to me that so many people, like you just said, people on the left are starting to realize, I think this defies partisan politics, and it's just a matter of people who are either thinking for themselves or aren't. But so many people remain fooled by the simple tactics of this mockingbird media, whether it's Washington Post, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever, or now what we're seeing in social media. Obviously, we've said it many times, social media has become a more important element in the way that people are receiving their information than it ever was before, and it's coinciding with all these companies. I mean, the fact that you had those major technology companies in Facebook and Google and Apple all acting in concert to push InfoWars out of the public sphere is so outrageous, it almost defies explanation. And the fact that people don't like, or some people don't like, Alex Jones, they think it's okay. I mean, there could and should be a Nazi channel or a KKK channel. That's what freedom of speech is about. And if people don't like that channel, they don't watch it, or they watch it and educate themselves as to how idiotic these groups are. But just kicking them out, that's fascism.
Right. And it's not as if the people at Twitter, I mean, it's not as if the people in the mainstream media, the Pulitzer Prize winning, people have covered themselves in glory. I mean, we're seeing the mainstream media. I mean, CBS used to be a very serious broadcasting operation, and here you have the CEO gone, you have Charlie Rose gone, you have the head of 60 Minutes gone. I mean, what the hell are those people doing over there at CBS? And the situation in NBC is not much better, and ABC, Brian Ross was fired. who was their top, investigative reporter.
I mean, to answer your question as to what are they doing, they're constantly broadcasting shite, I believe, is what's going on at CBS. And also putting strikes on our videos for using 60-year-old clips from heavily modified Mission Impossible episodes.
From their Shitholi.
Exactly. Now, Charles, people also are frequently visiting this playlist where we've put together all of the Sunday with Charles episodes, as well as the episodes from Charles Ortella's Closing In. And this is our 104th show today. We're closing in on 200 already, Charles.
It's amazing.
It is, but this is quite a trove of information. It's interesting also how, even now that Crowdsource the Truth, the original Crowdsource the Truth channel on YouTube, where people can search for Jason Goodman and find the original channel, we used to get 20 to 40,000 views on an episode of Sunday with Charles, and now it's sort of settled into 10 to 20,000. I wonder if that's a residual effect of, these purchased downvotes or the variety of different stupid tactics that some of these people are using. I mean, so here we see 25, 26. That's interesting that just popped up the second I zoomed in on it. Is someone watching did that happen, or did I?
I don't know. I wasn't.
Perhaps it was 25 and too small. But I mean, what I've noticed is that people tend to put in these dislikes before the show even starts. Like we've got 2 on this episode right now. So perhaps people don't like the good, the bad, and the fugly, or there's someone who's figured out that if you put in dislikes early, that has an impact on the uptake of the video. I don't know, but I think we've seen good evidence that there are people out there who have gamified trolling on YouTube and are able to achieve significant results when they put their minds to it.
Right, well, I think the thing to remember, one thing to remember with what we're trying to do here is our audience is U.S. attorneys, of which there are 93. It's the IRS, it's state attorneys general and state finance departments, and up to say 50 countries. We're not trying to get, I mean, it'd be nice if we got millions of views, but that's not what we're trying to get. And for a dense topic like this, a lot of numbers, a lot of legal stuff, politics, to get 10 to 15,000 views on something that's 2.5 hours long, that's not bad.
Yeah, no, I'm very pleased. I just like to point these things out. There was one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, Charles, because, I was very confused, interested, intrigued by that whole little episode where Elon Musk was smoking the devil's lettuce with Joe Rogan, and I did an episode about it, and it was weird because I wanted to feature it on the channel, and it had an age restriction on it. It would not allow me to do that, and of course the age restriction is going to reduce, well, getting to it right now is difficult, but the age restriction would reduce the number of people who are able to see it. You've got to be signed in, you've got to be over 18, and there was nothing about it that should have made it age restricted. I've seen lots of videos of people smoking pot, promoting pot. Those aren't age restricted. I was just commenting that the guy had smoked pot. And then the thing that was really weird was on Crowdsource the Truth 2, the same exact video was not age restricted. So I began to wonder, is there someone out there complaining that this is a video about pot? And if they are complaining, is that an accurate complaint? Do I have any ability to see the complaint, to see the complainer? It's another one of these anonymous accounts putting out some, spurious accusation that has no validity, no actual person behind it. I'm being deprived of my right to face my accuser, and these cowards hide behind these anonymous sock puppet accounts, doing damage to our otherwise useful network of social media destinations that can be used to share information.
Cool. Well, maybe we should dive into the...
I can tell you're losing your patience.
No, I just want to, I'm
Absolutely.
Always mindful of your suggested limit of time, and there's a bunch to get into here.
I hear you. Let's get this set of slides ready to go.
So, as we try to do, we summarize the direction that we're going to go here in each presentation so you could get a quick sense of the subject matter. And basically, I think to all but the completely clueless, of which sadly there are quite a few completely clueless people out there. They tend to be scruffies and heavily tattooed and, you know, in a fog most of the day. But for most people, it now is abundantly clear that the Keystone Cops in the Democratic Party deprived Bernie Sanders unfairly of the nomination for president, which I would argue that if we could really go back in and look carefully, for example, at certain contested primaries like Nevada, like California, like New York, I think that he was dealt a dirty deed, and I actually think that he would have beaten Trump. So it's very curious to me that he's not more upset. But that said, I think it's odd. I mean, it's obvious to really most sentient human beings that there was a conspiracy to actually probably to have Trump be the nominee, thinking that he'd be the easiest to beat with an October surprise.
Well, they said that in the emails, the
Right.
WikiLeaks emails, the Pied Piper theory.
Right. So get him to be the candidate. They were probably laughing and thinking this is hysterical and he's going to be humiliated and, you know, measuring the drapes for the curtains in the White House and all that stuff. And then, you know, these guys lost bigly, as Trump would say. And the evidence that's got to be in the public domain, in the government records and in Google emails and elsewhere, of these people's shock and horror, what are we going to do, woe was me, that kind of stuff. I bet you there is abundant evidence of all that. And here we have Donald Trump now. He's been president almost for 2 years. And I obviously am in no position to tell Donald Trump what to do or what not to do, but we're getting pretty close to a point where loyal pro-law and order people looking at this mess have got to begin saying, listen, it's not that complicated. The Clinton Foundation is a massive fraud. This is our 104th video. We have gotten exactly no negative comments back, no criticisms back. Nobody from the Clintons, directly or indirectly, has said, you know what, you're off base, cut this crap out,
Right.
Cease and desist. Nobody's done that. It is, I think, accepted wisdom that this thing is a massive fraud. What is taking so long? You know, what the hell is taking so long? When we got, since the last time we were on, the IRS chief was, in fact, the new
Yes.
IRS chief has, in fact, been confirmed, okay? I appreciate the Jewish holiday, an important one on Tuesday and Wednesday. I appreciate that, you know, things move more slowly in government land than they might. But come on, the Clintons are out there. Even now, Hillary Clinton is in Little Rock at some stupid event at the Presidential Center. Why are American government authorities letting these Clintons continue to raise money with a record of filings that is just it's so false and materially misleading and deceptive? It breaks, you know, multiple state, federal, and foreign laws, and it's not, again, it's not that complicated. So it's past time for prosecutions, and more people are getting this. In fact, now people I don't really know all that well will contact me one way or another. I run into them at a coffee shop or whatever. They're saying, boy, it looks like it's going your way. It looks like things are going to happen.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was at a lunch last week where you know, we were talking about things, and I was pretty much out of the 8 of us, there were 2 economic conservatives, and the balance were not. And these are people I've been telling about this mess for almost 3 years now. And they finally, one of them said that person had heard that New York State's Attorney General has been investigating the Clinton Foundation. Now, we don't know this for certain, but this is what a lunch partner said, and I've heard other ways maybe that is true. And after all, if you're going to look at the Trump Foundation, which there are elements in the Trump public record that suggest to me that maybe there were problems, and now they've been dealt with. If you're going to look at Trump, you have to look at not only Clinton, all these Clinton entities, and there are many, many of them. You also have to look at Cuomo.
What about the Schmidt Foundation? What about all these foundations?
Well, I'm talking about people who have foundations operating here in New York with political connections. I mean, Cuomo has a family, has a foundation called, or his family members are involved with something he started called Project Hope.
I thought you were going to say the mafia.
That's the kind of thing you get to say. But Project Hope sure looks very checkered to me. And in
Project Dope.
Well, it's supposedly a homeless shelter operation, and it is a mixture.
I think they have one over here on 25th Street.
Wouldn't surprise me. And it's a mixture of homeless shelters and also services for people who used to be homeless and are now out on their own, either renting or owning something. And the problem that I see with it is, first of all, that this charity run by one of his sisters, Andrew Cuomo's sisters, pays a lot of people too much money and gets grants, I think, from the states and city governments to run this service, and the numbers don't look very good. And in addition, there are for-profit elements to it. There are real estate investments mixed into this thing, and just on surface level, it reeks.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you. If the thing I'm thinking about is in fact Project Hope, the thing I found, it was just built within the last year or so, or maybe 2 years, but the thing I found most remarkable about it is that when you walk by the building, it looks more like some, fancy new college than it does. Well, I can't even get to the web page because it's bringing up all this, give us money stuff. But
yeah, this is the kind of thing that you have to stop for charities. These charities are constantly out raising money as we speak. They're always looking. You see the donate now, and unlike when you sell securities, there seems to be no real requirement to get the fine print out there to say, yeah, our numbers have been audited. Yes, we don't have any problems. You can ask for all these deals. And look at all these big companies that are matching this particular one project. I mean, these are the biggest, some of the biggest companies operating in New York State.
Well, I'm going to check and see if this is the same thing I'm thinking about.
Well, if you go into Google, we could quickly do it.
Sure. Well, do we want to do that now, or do we want to?
Well, as you wish. We can.
Let's see. Project Hope. I guess if we do Google Maps. I guess it's not the thing. Well, maybe. I don't know. Let's see.
Doesn't seem to be one in New York.
No. So I guess I had it wrong. There's something else. BRC. I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
BRC is the thing that's over here. But anyway, enough of that. Back to the...
Yeah, so if, the people have cottoned on to this, and that's why you see the crowds for Donald Trump's rallies, which were suspended this week because of the hurricane. But Donald Trump is, I think, got a rally scheduled for the 20th in this. There's this small town in Nevada called what's it called? Las Vegas.
Right.
Yeah, and he doesn't know much about Las Vegas, so I doubt he'll get a very big crowd to his rally. Of course, he's going to get a massive crowd, and he's going to be stepping things up. And I think more and more people. I and you have given Donald Trump a long honeymoon period to kind of get settled, get his people in. He has delivered many different ways. There's some tough things to get through, between now and the election, but we really need to get this Clinton Foundation dealt with.
Charles, I'm sorry to distract because I know I'm apt to do it, but have you seen Trump VR?
That's the one you did, right?
Yeah, perhaps I've mentioned it in the past, but this is a virtual reality motion picture that I made at a Trump rally in Las Vegas, where the idea is you can stand among the deplorables here, and if you have a 3D virtual reality headset, this will all come to you in 3D. Do we have it at the high? Yeah, there's the 3D setting up there. So this is an interesting little thing. This was done at the Venetian. So you can, here's President Trump standing right on stage there, and you can have a virtual reality experience going to the Donald Trump rally.
There you go.
Yeah, not that useful, but I thought I'd share it with you.
Good. So if we then go to this next slide.
Yeah.
This is our standard disclaimer for you. I see you're now pushing 67.6 in viewers, which is great. And some of these viewers may not be aware that in the United States, if you're a foreign viewer, that we do have First Amendment rights that are protected to express our views, and we're not just sitting here spouting off without having done any homework on anything. We've done a lot of homework. You can see that this presentation rests on, you know, a large number of preceding ones. In about 80% of all cases, there are supporting slides. We only began doing the slides in October, I think, of last year. But those slides are all freely available. They have links that you can check. We're not trying to necessarily link each one of these presentations back to a preceding one, because that would create, you know, a big circular do loop or whatever. But you can be very certain when we say something about the Clinton Foundation, it is based on a deep dive through a lot of available evidence, gleaned many different ways, cross-checked many different ways, that proves beyond doubt that this is the largest set of unprosecuted frauds ever attempted in history.
When you even just consider the time period during which Sunday with Charles has existed, it's a little bit crazy to think about how some prosecutor hasn't picked up this ball and run with it. There's just so much damning evidence contained in these 103 preceding videos. It's almost difficult to contemplate.
It's amazing. And, you know, so we just, a word to the wise, the people who are doing this with me decided long ago that we couldn't necessarily have confidence just that one government would do this alone. So we made it entreaties to multiple governments around the world and multiple state governments inside this, and multiple regulators inside this country. Eventually, this is going to crack. Eventually, the Clintons will be brought to heel. They may try the approach of saying, you know, we've done enough good work. You know, we've already transferred our papers over to the National Archives.
Who will try that approach?
Maybe the Clintons will try something like that. You know, we can't ask these trustees to give of their time anymore. So we're going to wind down everything, you know, other than simply the Presidential Center and massage parlor out there in Little Rock. All this other stuff, all these initiatives, forget about it. We're not doing that anymore. Because after all, you know, we've dedicated our lives to public service. You know, they could try something like that.
That's not going to fly at all.
Well, I know. Won't get them out of Dodge. Shouldn't get them.
Arkansas brand bullshit. Only. I don't think that's going to fly in the Southern District of New York.
Right. On planet Earth.
Planet
Maybe
Earth.
in the alternative universe it will. So, again, thanks to the person who suggested that we begin each presentation with, you know, some key thoughts to take away. We have a bombshell report from John Solomon that came out early this morning. The link on the right there in section 1, that the evidence, I think, coming out from Lisa Page's traffic is that right immediately before the Mueller was appointed as special counsel, the FBI had determined they couldn't prove collusion. That's amazing. And this is a great article from John Solomon. Yeah, but this is just completely outrageous. You can't say, I mean, this tells me that at the highest level under the Obama administration, likely even the man himself, at the highest levels, they just made a decision. We don't like Trumpy. Get Trumpy. We're going to get Trumpy one way or another. Yeah. You work for me. I'm the President of the United States. I went to Harvard Law School. I was the president of the Harvard Law Review. I was a professor. I'm this, I'm that, me. Do it my way or we'll cashier you. And that's what too many people did. Cashier you? Fired, you know. And this is just outrageous. I think Donald Trump, now he's not a particularly litigious person. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, he is. Yeah. I mean, I think he and his business interests have been enormously damaged by these pukes. And that's what they are. I mean, when you go into government at a very high level, and you have the make or break discretion, prosecutorial discretion, you can start kinetic military adventures, toppling Libya and messing around in Syria. You don't use this vast power that you have to settle political scores in advance or after the election. You just don't do that. And for this to be allowed to stand uninvestigated, unpunished, just can't be. It sends such a horrible message to the next generations of people, because as bad as this is, there's probably somebody sitting there saying, I could do worse than this, you know, give me a shot.
Well, that's just it. It's not just sending a message, it's setting a legal precedent. I mean, some people still say to me, they're like, oh, well, that's why they need Mueller to investigate. No. That's not how criminal investigations work in the United States of America. There needs to be evidence of a crime sufficient to initiate an investigation, not, we don't like that guy, let's investigate the hell out of him and everybody he knows for 2 years until we find something.
Right, yeah, it's just it's outrageous,
outrageous
stuff. And good on John Solomon for coming up with this.
Yeah, he's always doing great work there.
Yeah. So, now if we hit this next blue link, this is a very lengthy one. We don't have the time to dwell on it today.
But it's a good one.
This is people always say, well, Charles, I mean, you know, you don't ever tell us much about the laws that might be broken here. I mean, this is a chapter on obstruction of justice. This is the criminal code here. And you can just keep, you know, look at all this obstruction of proceedings before departments, agencies, and committees. That's basically what they've been doing. Theft or alteration of record or process. You know,
this is a list of felonies?
I don't know that they're all felonies, but this is a list of crimes.
Because I'm looking at assault on process server and I'm thinking about Sean Lucas.
Right. Right. I mean, but you can go down obstruction of criminal investigations. I mean, that's what the Clinton Foundation is.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's people look at this and Dopey James
like their
Comey,
resume right here.
Dopey James Comey will, you know, look at this and say, I don't see anything. I don't see a Trump doll. You know, I got perfect vision. You know, I might write books about higher loyalty. I don't see that Trump doll. What are you, nuts? You know, that's Dopey James Comey. You look at the Clinton Foundation, that 100% of Hillary Clinton's, in quotes, monkey business or government business routed through these private servers and, you know, above commodes and closets here and there. You know, all this traffic, you know, sent through these devices that were non-secure. You know, she's buying these devices by, or aides are buying them on eBay because she doesn't like the modern versions of BlackBerry. She wants to go back and get a really old one. You know, I mean, and Dopey James Comey can't look at this and say, of course this is obstruction of justice and a criminal conspiracy. Dopey James Comey and Mueller, you know, Mueller was there as head of the FBI for, what was it?
12
years. You know, while the Clinton Foundation went from being a small, you know, baloney fraud into being this gigantic, you know, fraud machine. He's the head of the FBI the whole time. He can't see any of this. And, you know, we're not stupid in America. I mean, there are some stupid people, but people who follow this look at this and say, you know, this is not simply a case of government, you know, run amok in a minor fashion. This is a gigantic money laundering, criminal conspiracy, enriching donors, perverting the justice system, perverting the good name of all American charities by letting this thing continue to operate, calling into question what our charities or how our charities are viewed that operate internationally. You know, and as somebody you know likes to say, it is well past time to do something about it.
So what can people do with this list of felonies? Just look at it and revel in the extent to which the Clintons have violated it's almost like a checklist for them, Charles.
Yeah, this is just one corner of the law, you know, obstruction of justice. Bob Woodward and the others were, you know, fond of saying the cover-up is worse than the crime. I mean, that's exactly what these people are doing. They're attempting to cover up the largest charity fraud ever attempted in the world, going back to October 23rd, 1997. And I've got to believe that, you know, given the extent of this set of frauds, the records inside the FBI and the Department of Justice, the IRS, of investigations that may have happened in the past, the files that are out there, are a treasure trove, because they're going to show, you know, either they're going to show that they got to the fraud and decided, you know, it's Clinton, you know, we like to remain alive, you know, ask Ron Brown about how challenging the Clintons works. You know, either it's that, or it's they got the investigators, you know, they had something on the investigators, but there's got to be a record not only of, I mean, the public record exposes the crimes, but to get to the obstruction, you've got to go through the FBI records and the Department of Justice records and see what's in those files, much of which is not going to be available, I would guess, to the general public, but now should be available to the new head of the IRS. You know, when we get rid of Rat Rodenstein, and I don't know who he's replaced by, I think we may have to get rid of Christopher Wray at the FBI. There has to be a SWAT team going in here and saying, look, what the hell has this guy in Salt Lake City been doing? Huber. You know, is he actually studying this, or is he just out, getting ready for ski season, waxing his skis, selecting his outfits? You know, is he doing anything? What are the people in Little Rock doing here?
I think he's going to need a bigger boat. You know, you mentioned Bob Woodward and the cover-up and the crime. I think it's possible that Bob Woodward might be part of the cover-up. We did a show, Kevin Shipp and I, where Kevin revealed firsthand testimony of Bob Woodward lying about having spoken to William Colby on his deathbed. But Kevin was the head of a CIA security contingent that was guarding the room. And when he came out of his coma, you know, his wife and daughter said he never spoke when he came out of the coma. So how could Woodward have gotten this deathbed confession when Kevin says he never walked into the room and his wife and daughter say he never spoke again? So Bob Woodward seems to be a blatant liar, and people can see that episode of the Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth.
That's great. That's great. So if we, you know, my view at this point, one of the reasons there's so much resistance is that when the dam breaks here, and by the way, Donald Trump, President Trump today has tweeted out referring to the Mueller investigation as that illegal Mueller investigation. I mean, that's pretty serious. I know it's a tweet, but that's a pretty serious statement for the President of the United States to say. And I happen to agree with him. I think the whole premise of this investigation is far outside the law. And a lot of FBI employees must currently be, you know, to the extent they're still there, they must be furious. You know, if we hit the third link, sorry.
That's it, right?
That's the fourth.
Oh, sorry.
We've shown this FBI vault to people before, and it's really worth monitoring. This is the collection, the treasure trove, for 4 years of investigating. It's only 3 parts, whereas the Hillary R. Clinton trove is 25 parts have been released so far. And I submit to you that there's a lot of material on this William J. Clinton Foundation investigation that began in February of 2001, finished sometime in 2005, that will be very juicy material. And people inside the FBI know it. And the degree to which, my guess, the degree to which they've been stifled, you know, Archie Bunker style, you know, stifled, you know, you try to bring it up, and it's like, no, we're not going there. But particularly in this period, 2001 to 2005, it is crystal clear that the Clinton Foundation was operating as a rogue, fake charity that was really nothing more than a money laundry to get money to finance attempts to install John Kerry as president in 2004, to help with various Democratic elections in 2002 and 2004. It is crystal clear from just, you know, a straightforward review of the evidence that's out there that this was a horrible fraud back then. So how come all these FBI people spent 4 years on it? How come there were grand juries impaneled and nothing happened? Well, I think we know the answer. Who was leading the investigation? Dopey James Comey.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't Rosenstein somehow involved?
Rosenstein was on point. Mueller was briefed on it. All these 3 people, and perhaps many more on the 17 angry Democrat team and around it, have a lot to be afraid of here, because when you go down this path, the conclusion is inescapable that there's dirty people in the FBI still today and in the Department of Justice who think they're above the law.
And they've been covering crimes for decades.
So they're good at it.
Right.
So
they got a lot to lose.
Yeah, so President Trump is now in a position where he really needs, the fourth link there, he really needs to declassify as much information as possible, like yesterday. You know, he really needs to get to it. And you're one ahead, yeah.
Sorry.
So this is Andrew McCarthy in the Hill, I think on National Review. And you know, he's very experienced. I guess he was the assistant U.S. attorney here in the Southern District of New York. He's, you know, a prolific writer and pundit on many different forums. And he's basically saying, you know, we really ought to be extremely upset already about what we know, that without seeing the FISA stuff, but
Yeah.
where is this FISA stuff? You know, and how come more supposed civil rights advocates aren't pounding the table
Right.
and saying this is absurd?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. A lot of people are anticipating that some of these FISA documents will be declassified this week, but I feel like we've been hearing that basically every week.
Right. Yeah, and you know, then we have this piece in the Hill. You're on it there. That this guy, the person writing this, Jeff Cortese or whatever, was basically saying that, you know, the fix was in from the beginning. Hillary was never going to be charged.
Wow.
And that's just crap. I'm sorry. It's no way. The notion that you could see life. Actually, here you see most. Kavanaugh accuser breaks silence. See, this is another. I don't know if that's off the Washington Post or.
Should I click that?
Yeah, let's see if that gets you. Yeah, this is the one we were trying to get to when we were talking about it. But now the name of this person, Christine Blasey Ford, who's a 51-year-old professor at Palo Alto University, is now claiming that she thought Kavanaugh might inadvertently kill her. I mean, this is such a low approach. If you seriously thought somebody was going to kill you back when you were 17, did you tell your parents about it? You know, did you tell? I mean, you don't keep this to yourself, you know, and then you write this letter. Feinstein obviously didn't think it was immediately credible, otherwise they would have made an issue of it.
That's the biggest factor to me, because a high school student clumsily groping another over her clothes, that sounds like the homecoming dance. And if this were an actual incident, why didn't they bring it up right away? Why are they waiting? It feels like everything they do, Charles, is they're just throwing everything under the sun at the wall, and if it doesn't stick, they just get something more and throw it up there.
Right, but this is just so far. I mean, it'd be one thing if Kavanaugh was somebody who'd never been investigated for any previous position. He's had 6 FBI investigations. Now, granted, you know, maybe it's the same team that was trying to look at the Clinton Foundation, looking at Kavanaugh's record, right? But you know, come on, 6 investigations. You are the ranking member on the Justice Committee there in the Senate, and you know, you got this letter in July. Why didn't you immediately, if it was so serious, why didn't you do something about it back in July? Why didn't you, you know, call Kavanaugh, you know, in for questioning and specifically ask him about this? You didn't do any of that. Instead, what you do is you write this bullshit letter, you know, disguising the name of the person. Now this person comes forward Sunday afternoon, you know, New York time, in the week right before the vote.
Yeah.
You know, this is another smear attempt.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep, that's all they do. Something wrong with Dianne Feinstein. She's got Chinese spies working for her. Her office was the least friendly, least professional of all that I visited there on Congress. And she just always comes off unhinged, in my opinion, whenever I see her speaking. She doesn't strike me as someone with a lot of knowledge or having it together. She reminds me of like a wacky 5th grade teacher.
She's crazy.
She's crazy.
This sets such a bad. I mean, to do this kind of stuff. Now, mind you, we thought to go back and check and see. You know, here's this paragon of virtue, cares about these type of accusations. How did she vote in the Bill Clinton impeachment trial? So we went and checked that. She said not guilty. Now, there was a lot of evidence in that trial. The stories I'd read were that not as here we go down here. It's down further down the page. Make it smaller
on the screen there.
You know,
this is a good list to review.
Biden not guilty, not guilty. You know, and we get to.
How could these people say? So this is voting to impeach this guy, Robert Byrd. He's a KKK guy. I just was watching a video of him confirming Donald Rumsfeld for Secretary of Defense just prior to September 11th, 2001. And they're laughing it up. You got the KKK and the New World Order nominating who's going to destroy the world. This is absurd, Charles. I mean, so many of these people need to be prosecuted. This is why.
Durbin.
Not guilty.
Edwards.
Not guilty.
He's down.
Well, he was guilty too.
Right, and here's Dianne Feinstein.
Not
guilty, not guilty. I mean, you know, you can't do I mean, there was a trial, there was evidence. I've spent time with Juanita Broderick and Kathleen Willey and some of these other people, and I met Paula Jones, and you know, this was very serious, contemporaneous reporting,
credible testimony,
evidence.
From people who came forward right away with their names.
Right.
I mean, not right away when the incident occurred, but they didn't release anonymous things and sit on them for 3 months.
Right, and you know, in the case of Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick, I mean, and Kathleen Willey, who was the person who was on bimbo patrol? It was Hillary Clinton, who was enabling all this stuff. And now you have this idiot, Dianne Feinstein, you know, pulling this kind of stunt on somebody who, by all accounts, the 65 women who were in high school around the time he was there, you know, corroborating his side of things. You got this one accuser.
What did the 65 women say? That he was like a nerdy guy who wasn't
No, that he was a fine, upstanding, you know, they were there.
Right.
You know, they attest to his good character, and that, you know, they believe him and they don't believe the accuser. I mean, but that said, you know, the way you do this, I would have hoped, is if you're going to have an investigation into a Supreme Court justice, you have a process. It's not like Dianne Feinstein can say, well, you know, I only just got to the Senate, I don't know how this works. I mean, she's been in the Senate, you know, since the last millennium.
No, I believe she doesn't know how it works.
Right.
That's believable.
Right, but she's been here for 20 plus years. She has this case where Bill Clinton was guilty. You know, and he got away, not in that case, not with murder, but he destroyed many people's, women's lives at the time when he had a teenage daughter. You know, what kind of example is that being set by Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton for enabling? And now this idiot gets a letter in July, sits on it, and decides, well, you know, it looks like he's going to get across the line. We've got to pull a stunt. We've got to come up and, you know, we've got to try him in the court of public opinion, forget his due process, forget his ability to defend himself. This is the way we're going to do things. We'll get, you know, the Jeff Bezos plaything, the Washington Post, to publish this thing and, you know, see whether it has an impact in the court of public opinion. It's outrageous.
Yeah, that's what they love to do, is to try to sway the court of public opinion. And I think that someone like Juanita Broderick should be steaming over this.
Yeah.
Lack of justice. And these women who come forward and say they're champions of women but support Bill Clinton and cover up for him, it is really disgraceful.
Yeah. So now with this conspiracy and the sixth point here becoming more and more obvious, Dick Morris and his wife, in that link below, they wrote a book in 2017 arguing that this was all a conspiracy, and you know, and they've been proven right. Now, Dick Morris can be
proving that what was a conspiracy? The Clinton Foundation?
No, that the intelligence community waged a war against Donald Trump.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree. I didn't know Dick Morris wrote a book about that. I'd love to read that.
Yeah, he writes. I think he tends to write about a book a year, if not more than that.
He makes good videos. I like Dick Morris.
Yeah, and he's been around. You know, he's certainly not on the Clintons' Christmas card list any longer, but he's got a lot of experience and he's got some good perspectives. But you know, it seems obvious to me, and I'm no expert on spies, but it seems obvious to me that our intelligence apparatus has completely, you know, lost the plot, and you know, believes that it operates, that it's not under the purview of anybody, and that they can just do what they want to do, and that the people on the right side of the intelligence community have their little businesses that they create. They make a lot of money on the side,
right, and
they have the ability to crush you if you go up against them. If you're interested in politics. Fortunately, I'm not interested in politics, so. You know.
Yeah, but you're trying to crush them.
Well, I think the American people need, you know, when these spies go on these rogue missions, you know, rigging elections inside and outside the country, trying to upend a president, you know, this has consequences around the world. It makes the world less safe. We're less safe in it, and so yeah, you know, comes a point where people like me who didn't want to come out in public and speak about anything, we start talking.
That's right.
So now, Judge Janine seems last Saturday night, I guess she
this was great.
Used the term demon rat. Now, I think somebody you know has been using that term a little
Well,
bit.
we know she's a regular viewer of the show, right? So.
But she may have well been using it before I did. But she is.
I don't think I heard anybody talk about demon rats before you did, Charles.
Well, we got a bunch of them. And, you know, Janine is fearless and experienced,
Yeah.
and properly took, you know, Senator Feinstein to task.
Yeah.
And look at this, 6,408 comments.
Wow. Well, right. She, in this opening statement, she goes on to talk about how she has prosecuted in favor of women who have been victims of sexual assault, and she talks about the various factors that she used as a judge to determine the credibility of their allegations, and the length of time waited to report them is one of the factors.
Sure.
And there are mitigating circumstances, of course. Juanita Broderick told us about how she was married at the time that the incident occurred, and it was the 1970s. Women weren't really as empowered as they are right now, weren't as likely to be believed. She was married, she was a very religious woman, she was ashamed. So there are factors.
Sure.
It's a complicated thing, but this commentary from Judge Janine is really good. And also, you know, she mentions the demon rats, so a little tip of the hat to Charles. That's quite good, right?
But, you know, good for Judge Janine, and we'll wait and see. I mean, honestly, I think just as in other situations where people falsely accuse somebody of a dire crime,
Yeah.
you go to prison for that.
Well, you should. You can't just, you know, weaponize the judicial system and law enforcement. You know, we heard that story about some actor on a train got into a fight with a woman and called the cops, and said she had a bomb.
Right.
That's a bomb hoax. You can't use the cops to get back at somebody you're having an argument with.
Now, Hillary supposedly, according to this news account, is in Little Rock today.
I wish I would have known about that, Charles. I would have gone there.
Yeah.
This was a weird article, I thought, in part because it's not loading, but mostly because it's talking about all this artwork from the White House that went on to be shown in their presidential library, but it's coming from the Red Room. What the hell is the Red Room? Red Room.
What, red or rape?
Well, the Red Room is often associated with a kill room in some of these satanic rituals, and I found it remarkable that this was all commissioned in 1993, and it's going to the strip club IMAX theater, I mean the William J. Clinton Presidential Library. This is the first time in 18 years. I mean, again, I don't subscribe to this stuff, but I do believe there are people who do. It's 3/31/2019. There's a lot of 9s and 3s in there. I don't know. I know you'd hate this stuff. I just observe it and think that there are superb owl worshiping crazy people who put a lot of stock in that stuff and make certain events coincide with certain numbers to send out a message to their like-minded ilk.
Well, I think, to me, the significance is she's out there in Little Rock. You know, this Clinton Presidential Center is a disaster of a fraud. I would have hoped, and this is wishful thinking, that one of the reasons she might be out in Little Rock is to sit down with lawyers,
get prosecuted,
and maybe appear before a grand jury would be one great reason to be out there. But nonetheless, she's swanning around now, inspecting the penthouse apartment and the. I wonder if she even stays in that penthouse apartment, but inspecting that penthouse apartment and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, massage, swimming pool, and IMAX screen.
I want to check out the dinosaur movie while we're down there. Love that film.
So, if we go back to the slide, though.
It'd be interesting if they had the first porno IMAX theater.
Well, actually, I just want to go back one quick thing. So, we do now have, I guess you have 67,000, almost 600 subscribers, and we have about 50 days left until the election. And these general elections, these midterm elections, they are going to make a very big difference. To the extent that you agree that it's time to really push attorneys general, push governors, push senators, push representatives to do something about these frauds. The ability of people in the crowd to just take one person you know a little bit and say, are you aware of this? Do you intend to vote? Have you dug in? Do you understand how big a fraud this is? Do you understand how big this miscarriage of justice is? To the extent people in the crowd do that, I think you can have an enormously positive impact. and feel that you're part of something really special to get this government, American and state governments, back on the track, where they're on the straight and narrow where they need to be. Because we're off course.
You could at least clear your calendar of dinner parties that you'll never be invited to
That's
again.
true, one way or the other. Yeah. You'd be saving time.
I got a thing in the mail to vote in the Democratic primary. I went over there the other day and I was like, who's a Republican here? And they were like, no, this is the Democratic primary. And I was like, duh. But then I voted for Cynthia Nixon because I thought she's such a dope. If she wins, she's guaranteed to lose. It was my own Pied Piper theory, but she lost anyway.
She got one vote, maybe two.
Probably me, yeah. I didn't even like her on that show.
Sex in the City.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can go to the next page. We don't need to pull up all these links because there's a fair amount of them, and I'm mindful of the time. But this Florence situation, from what I can tell so far, I mean, when we go back to last week in the breathless reporting category 4, maybe 5, you know, it's going to destroy, it's going to be the worst ever. I think, you know, no one likes to suffer loss of anything, and it's a tragedy when, I guess it's 11 this morning, people had been reported dead. In things like this, you really very frequently don't know the true extent of the casualties until some time has passed. You can get into the affected areas. But so far, it seems as if the damage is not quite as bad as I would have guessed it might be, not being an expert.
Didn't someone blame the hurricane on Trump?
They tried to do that. They were whipping people into a frenzy, you know, that this is going to be worse than Katrina, and Trump's already getting things wrong, and this isn't right, and that isn't right, and, you know.
No, I think someone, maybe like, I don't remember who it was, but someone was actually saying that, you know, because of his policies and that he's favoring the economy over the environment, that the actual hurricane was his fault.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about this country. You can express your view, you know, it doesn't have to be grounded. You say what you want.
Irrespective of how stupid it is.
Yeah, and that's really what Thomas Jefferson and the founders believed. That's exactly the right way. Let anybody say what they want to say, but if it's particularly stupid,
that should be obvious.
You have the opportunity to tell, you know, go say this person over here on that street corner is particularly stupid for these 50 reasons.
Oh, but then you might get sued. Apparently, you know, calling someone an idiot is grounds for an $18 million lawsuit, according to another intelligence operative with the last name Steele. They're all having the last name Steele. Christopher Steele, Robert David Steele. There's some woman with the last name Steele who came out on some joker's YouTube channel.
Well, that's what they like to do, steal.
Why are they all the last name Steele?
Because they like to steal, along with the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, they all like to steal.
It's crazy.
But in this mayhem, this is one that we might hit. This neon nettle. I've seen several stories. I don't know what it is yet.
I've actually worked with Urkel.
Have you really?
He was the doctor in Call of the Wild, the first film I worked on.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But I mean, when did this guy who had so much promise in 2004, when did he turn into Urkel? I mean, he even, I don't know if you've noticed it, Jason, he's even dressing a little bit like Urkel with his, you know, pants, not in this picture, but you'll see pictures of him with his pants too high up and the shirt too small. And he's just, forget the angry image here, but I watched him try to take credit for Trump's economy.
Ridiculous.
I mean, it's just, what are you smoking? I mean, it's just
cigarettes.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
This guy kicked out of Disneyland for smoking cigarettes.
Yeah,
right.
to say, you know, you didn't build that. To go down a track of saying, which he did, and his people really believe, that all these businesses, Crowdsource the Truth, wouldn't exist if it weren't for the brilliance of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. You know, and the whole in Durbin and all these other people who made it possible for there to be a city and to somebody to build a building in which you have this now operation. It's all because of them. You didn't come up with any of this. You didn't build. Somebody who thinks like that is basically fundamentally economically illiterate, and is now only confirming it by the comment that, you know, that this resurgence in the economy is all because of Barack Obama.
I would love to caption this photo, Charles. Trump's like, you know you're going to jail, right?
Right. It's just, it's really, I mean, and then for the other thing he was doing, you know, he was always, the pitch for the Democrats is, you know, we want to move forward, not backward, Right?
Yeah.
That's what they always. That's really insightful. It just causes the divorced people with too much money just torrent of money. He wants to go forward, not backward. But in essence, the argument for Obama and Bite Me is that we want to go backward. We want to go back to the Obama Bite Me 8 years with Hillary Clinton and then feckless John Kerry as Secretary of State. That's what in essence, what he's really arguing is we need to go back to the time when he was president. And then I just think it's unseemly for the former President of the United States in his speech to be, everything's about him.
It was one of the worst speeches I've ever seen him give, because no matter what we want to say to criticize Barack Obama, he definitely is one of the most skillful orators we've had as president in some time.
He was in the beginning. I mean, as a campaign,
way better than George W.
Well, come on, let's have a standard here.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, I would argue that the speech that he gave in that convention in 2004 is certainly among the top 10 speeches ever delivered by an American politician. It really was. I mean, I don't know if you were watching politics back then.
Not so much, and I don't recall, but I mean, whenever I've observed him, he's certainly a good public speaker.
I remember there was chatter about the speech coming up, and there were articles, why is the Democratic Party showcasing somebody who has no experience as a state senator, giving him this big role? And it's not like I spend a lot of my time watching speeches at the Democratic or Republican national conventions, but it prompted me to say, maybe I should watch this. And so I watched it, and I was blown away. I thought, this is amazing, because it really was a very clever speech. It hit themes, bringing out the best of all of us in America, and it was total. What do they call it?
Mind control.
Cop swaddle or something.
Neuro-linguistic programming, I think they call it.
I mean, it was just total rubbish. But anyway, when did this guy who was so eloquent and gifted and hopeful turn into just a scold, a nasty scold, taking credit for other people's work? I mean, it's not going to work. We talked about at length about Senator Not So Feinstein, so we can skip that. Well, or
okay.
Not. Yep. But then we get to the peanut farmer loser,
right?
Jimmy Carter. Now I have not met. I've spent time breakfast with Jimmy Carter when he was governor, campaigning for president in 1975. And I think I may have told you privately, Jason, but we had in the residential college at Yale, where I was, somebody left a lot of money for a fellowship where you could, people like Jimmy Carter and former presidents would come and live with us for 2 or 3 days. So I get this call from a classmate saying, Charles, you got to help. Well, I said, no one wants to have a meal with this guy, Jimmy Carter.
Wow.
Because he was then, a nobody. He wasn't the front runner or anything. It was just some, peanut farmer governor from Georgia. Why would you want? So I got to sit next to this guy.
Wow.
And he was so dull and
really?
Unengaged, not that smart.
Wow.
It was like, do I have to sit through the whole breakfast? And then, ordinarily, it's an honor that you actually, I think you get an honorarium for this called the Chubb, like the insurance company, the Chubb Fellowship. And this guy, instead of writing, most everybody else would get a really nice letter, thoughtful letter, send. This guy takes the back of a campaign contribution solicitation thing, just thanks, Jimmy.
Really?
Asking for money, more money for his campaign. It was like classless, idiotic loser. And then you look at his, what this guy did from 77, January 20th, 77 to January 20th, 1981.
Right.
This whole country was in such a disaster state as a result of this loser. And you're going to listen to him, saying that what he would like to do is completely undo everything Trump has done? That makes perfect sense to me. Now, this guy likes stupid-ass policies, so of course he wants to undo the solid strides that Donald Trump and his people are making around the world. I mean, this is not an argument in the peanut farmers' favor, and I will point out for the crowd, we haven't yet landed hard on this, Emory University has a very serious set of Clinton Foundation problems.
Oh, really?
Very serious. And this Jimmy Carter actually gave an award in his name, or there's an award in his name that was given to Bill Clinton in, I want to say March 31st, 2004 or 5, for Bill Clinton's fantastic work for fighting HIV/AIDS through a charity that didn't legally exist. This idiot decided he would honor Bill Clinton with an award. You know, I mean, it's just...
So Jimmy Carter, he ran against Ford, right?
Right.
So Ford was a guy who was never elected. He was appointed by Nixon, who was a disaster. I mean, the country, obviously I was like a baby. I had no idea what was going on, but you think we were in more disarray at that time during Watergate and the appointment of presidents amid the firings of vice presidents? And there's never been a guy who's been appointed. Why didn't they take the Speaker of the House and make him the...
No, what they did is in the case of Ford, what happened is Spiro Agnew, you know, was, I think he was in Maryland, and he got in serious trouble with IRS matters, so he had to be replaced. He was replaced by Ford.
No, he was not replaced. Ford was appointed to the position. There was no vice president at the time that Nixon stepped down, if I recall correctly. No. Ford became vice president?
Yeah, Ford was first the vice president.
Huh.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. But
why did he appoint the vice president and not take the Speaker of the House?
You wouldn't have, he's not in the line of succession. Agnew had to step down because of his IRS problems, and then the president had the right to appoint a successor.
Somebody who would subsequently pardon him.
Yeah, I guess.
And was on the Warrant Commission, Gerald Ford. Crazy.
Yale graduate, Yale Law School graduate, just like Bill and Hillary.
You're quickly becoming the only guy from Yale that I trust, Charles.
You'd trust my father.
I never met him.
I'd say you would trust him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we have this idiot, John Kerry, who, you know, you look at this twisted guy. First of all, I mean, he's grown up a life of privilege. His whole life is a life of privilege. He's figured out how to get ahead. He married rich women, you know, and that's what he did. First one, then a second one. Now you're going to attack the President of the United States to say that he's an 8-year-old boy with the insecurity of a teenage girl. I mean, this is so, this from a man, you know, who pulled PR stunts in the Vietnamese War, you know, and has manufactured this image of himself being a hero, who lost the 2004 election so badly he was beaten like a drum by George W.
Fellow bonesman.
And you're going to go around the world and try and undercut the President of the United States and think that Donald Trump is going to say, oh yeah, that's fine, John, whatever you want. You know, I'll tell you what, we'll send a security detail for you the next time you're in Geneva, you know, so when you get on the stupid bike that you ride around Geneva, you won't have yet another accident and hit your head. I mean, this is just, I mean...
Isn't this an odd thing to say, that he's come under fire for discussing the nuclear deal behind Trump's back? Shouldn't it say John Kerry under criminal investigation for violating the Hatch Act?
Logan Act.
Logan Act, sorry. And negotiating foreign policy when he has no legal right to do that?
Right. I mean, the way I believe it works is that, you know, when you are chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, you have enormous power, actually, because you decide on all these junkets these people want to go on, who gets to fly where, at government expense, doing what. So this is a guy, you know, who had a lot of power, who then, he was the one who missed, frankly, in the confirmation hearing of Hillary Clinton. He's the idiot who missed the fraud at the Clinton Foundation, in quotes, missed it. You know, either he knew about it and let it slide, or he missed it. And I believe Kerry has several children, but one of them, I think, is married to somebody with Iranian connections.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that.
So the notion that this guy would be out, you know, perched at Yale, he's lecturing at Yale in some program and flying around the world, meeting multiple times with the Iranian government, he's not doing that to help Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo figure out what to do in Iran. He's doing this to cover his ass and cover the asses of the Europeans who were taking money from Iran, is my guess. And Iran has threatened to release, you know, the details of, you know, what we'll call them commissions or bribes or whatever may have been paid to various politicians in the countries that were negotiating the Iran deal to get that thing happen.
Huh.
John's trying to cover all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and then we get to, we don't need to hit this link, Jim Carrey, who I think actually is very funny in a lot of the comedies, but just because you're a successful comedian does not mean that you know anything at all about politics and economics.
Yeah.
And here's this guy proclaiming the virtues of socialism, and to his shock and chagrin, a Venezuelan journalist just shreds him. But why do we care particularly much what I like Robert De Niro? Does that mean he's an actor? He's a fine actor, but I mean, why do I care about his politics? I don't care about his politics.
Well, the bigger question is, why doesn't Jim Carrey sell one of his undoubtedly numerous homes, move into a $1,500 apartment in Studio City, and give all of his money, just walk around Skid Row handing out money and spread the wealth?
Or just pay down California's debt.
Something like that.
I mean, but in this celebrity culture that we have, a comedian who's made several hundred million probably in money off his comedies gets a soapbox.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And this one here, this is an interesting one to hit. This is finally, we are really beginning to dive in and focus on the degree to which social media is silencing certain types of viewpoints. And it's not as if Zuckerberg and Dorsey and the Google twins, can point to a long record of being ahead of the curve, thinking through political issues. It's an intolerant group. It's an intolerant group of people who love unregulated globalism, who have, in the main, in this group, made their fortunes on the backs of their subscribers. In a fair deal, the people who participate in Twitter and Facebook and Google would get a slug of the wealth created in the public market by taking these things public. I mean, people don't think enough about how much good information they're providing about their buying habits, their thinking habits, their likes, their dislikes, via Facebook, Twitter, and Google. And here are these small number of multi-billion, they're not just mere millionaires and billionaires, these are,
among the richest in the world.
Right. From nothing in less than 20 years in certain cases.
Interesting.
So the balance of power needs to be switched back to a more sensible one. And I hope that Congress is going to do something about this soon, and I hope the President will do something about this really soon.
Yeah, I hope the same, and I'm glad to see Jim Jordan talking about Google, who obviously owns YouTube, and they've certainly been complicit, I think, in all kinds of harassment and all kinds of things that they could easily eliminate on their platform that would make the job of stifling this information more difficult for people who don't have a legitimate approach to it.
Yeah, and this also, we should hit this one here. We're going to talk about Manafort in a second, but on Saturday, information came out that suggests that this guy, Tony Podesta, may well have lied to investigators when those investigators were initially considering whatever prompted Tony Podesta to shut down his firm. And I believe that Americans across the political spectrum want to drain this swamp. And this guy, unfortunately, looks like a swamp rat, along with the podfather, his brother, another swamp rat.
They're terrible guys.
And this notion that you set up firms that are not regulated by anybody and then start charging your clients large fees that have no real basis in common sense, and you start working for foreign governments trying to gain advantages off of our government, is just outrageous stuff. And we'll talk about it in a second. There are many laws that are not yet enforced strictly enough about what you're supposed to register when you're working for foreign governments and companies that are controlled by foreign governments. Podesta's never did that.
Charles, one of the reasons your input is so valuable to me, and I'm so thankful that you have joined me in the creation of this show, is that even though we go on for hours, it's important because these acts, these lobbying, disclosure, I mean, this stuff is so complicated. These brainiacs in Washington understand it, have been gaming it, and we don't even hear about this on the mainstream news. So having a show like this is critical as people start to become more aware of what's going on. And then when you think about the entities, not just Google, Twitter, whatever, but those online that are complicit in trying to suppress what we're doing here, there's no excuse other than they're working for and with, even if they're not directly hired by them, the people that want to game these systems and steal money from everybody and break the law and get away with it.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
It is. And I am fond of how frequently you describe things as outrageous, because they are.
Yeah. So the second thing here is that Yahoo, which has become another appropriately named.
It's sort of irrelevant at this point, isn't it?
But here they're, in glee land here about, look how much money Manafort's going to lose. Look at the homes he's going to have to get rid of. If I'm the Clintons, this is a comparable. This is
what's going to happen to them.
Well, if they're lucky, because what the Clintons have done. I mean, Manafort does not stand accused of treason. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton, one could argue, did commit treason while Secretary of State, and the penalty for that is, it's a brutal haircut.
Yeah. Well, she could be in for one. I wonder if they make those Chairman Mao dresses in orange.
Yeah, and then just on this page, Larry Elder has a great column here, reminding people that Russiagate is sort of a distraction. What about Chinagate? What about the fact, which goes all the way back to '96, even before then? He doesn't mention Rajat Gupta of McKinsey and the Indian government's theft of monumental hundreds of billions of dollars of economic value against the U.S. And what about the period after Reagan won, before he was inaugurated, where Ted Kennedy got in touch with the Soviet Union to say, let's work together on managing Reagan?
Whoa, I didn't know about that.
that's been widely reported.
Wow.
So I think we have this conceit of the uniparty class in Washington, D.C. that elections are for little people. We'll change the name tags at the top of these organizations, but we'll keep them really, really busy so they can't do anything. And it's we, the important people, who make sure that the ship of state goes straight towards globalism, straight towards these crony deals. The Constitution, that's for white people. That's a long time ago. It's an illegitimate document. This has got to stop. It's really got to stop.
I like that. We, the important people.
Right.
In order to form a more perfect
disunion
for us.
Right. So, big question: who is finally going to investigate the investigators? And that is you, in the crowd. We in the crowd. We got to push for things to change here, so that we really get behind and understand what it is that Mueller and Rosenstein and Comey and the Clintons and Obama and Bush and others, what have they been hiding from we the people? They need, there needs to be fair administration of justice. We go to the next page. Okay, so this second trial, which was averted for Manafort, did not work out well for him, and I don't agree with Giuliani that this is not a problem.
Yeah.
We don't really know what Manafort, what pressure he is under. We don't, just like Michael Flynn confessed to a crime that maybe wasn't a crime.
Right.
We don't know what special pressures were put on Mr. Manafort here, and therefore we don't know how far Mueller and others may push Manafort to implicate, say, Don Jr. And so this I think is a somewhat ominous moment for the Trump team, and they can't actually truly know everything that Mueller is doing, which makes it more interesting to me that in this environment that President Trump would tweet out and now refer to the Mueller investigation as illegal. As I said it before, that suggests to me that maybe we're really going to go nuclear here, and Trump, may well escalate the conflict to, as I say, the nuclear level by firing Mueller or firing Rosenstein
Larry Klayman's been calling for that for weeks, and I can tell you that he agrees with you, Charles, that this Manafort plea deal is not good news for the Trump administration. So, yeah, it's a interesting development. But you know, of course, all the talking heads, all the people who are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome look at this and say, oh, well, see that? Trump must have done something. Paul Manafort pled guilty. It's amazing how simple the thinking is, how it stops after step one.
Right. Well, so this site, we've shown it to people before, so let's not hit this link here, but if you want to get smart on the Foreign Agents Registration Act, that is an excellent site, and it explains in great depth what you have to do if you're going to, as an American person, if you're going to work on behalf of a foreign government, if you're going to work on behalf of a company that is controlled by a foreign government, a foreign political party, you've got some serious registration to do. And the paperwork, I've looked through the forms, it's not like, you know, what's your favorite color? I mean, it's a very, very serious stuff, you know, the nature of your firm, the basis of the engagement, has anything changed, you know, all conflicts of interest. There's a lot of stuff that you have to fill out before you start working for these foreign governments or foreign controlled companies. So, but if we go back into the text here a little bit.
Well, of course, this only applies to people who are not working for the Clintons.
Right. If we focus on the middle one, 18 U.S.C. 219, it's a criminal offense for a public official of the United States. Let's think, who is a public official of the United States between January 21st, 2009 and
Hillary.
February 1st, 2013.
It's got to be Hillary.
It is, all right. So it's a criminal offense for a public official of the United States in the executive, legislative, or judicial branches to be or to act as an agent of a foreign principal required to register under FARA. So here's Bill Clinton running, though he wasn't an officer or director, running the Clinton Foundation all of the time that Hillary was Secretary of State, okay, and acting at the Clinton Foundation and at CHI, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, as an agent of numerous foreign principals, foreign controlled governments, companies, and foreign governments. He was, you know, actively doing this while his wife was Secretary of State. Please explain why this isn't a breach of 18 U.S.C. 219, which is a pretty serious penalties associated. I think 10 years in prison. And then 18 U.S.C. 951, if you're going to operate under the control of foreign governments or foreign officials, you have to notify the Attorney General before acting, which of course is not a problem because back then, and first you have the contemptible Eric Holder, who was cited with contempt by Congress, says that's a badge of honor, and then you have Loretta Lynch, you know, who likes to talk about golf and grandchildren and never about investigations on the tarmac out there right before the convention, Democratic convention, and the election in 2016.
Holder is a sketchy character. We need to watch out for him. He's apparently going to run for president.
I'll take that bet.
That would be bad.
Yeah, I'll take that bet.
Meaning that he won't win?
It's tough to run for president from prison. It's not impossible, but it's tough. So I would argue, certainly from the period October 1997, you have Bill is President of the United States, so he's a member of the executive branch. Then January 2001, Hillary's a senator, so she's in the legislative branch. Then she's in the executive branch. So certainly from October 97 through February 2013, this Clinton Foundation has, and the Clintons have been in, I would argue, gross breach of 18 U.S.C. 219, among many other problems. Yeah. And you know, these various initiatives, the Clinton Climate Initiative, when we did Green Regs and Scam,
right.
The HIV/AIDS Initiative, we've done many presentations on that. These are all fake initiatives. They're not controlled, there's no number, there's no paperwork. Nobody really knows how much money went towards these initiatives and then from the initiatives to other places. Nobody knows, because it's never been audited properly. Okay, so you look at this, even dopey James Comey by now, I mean, maybe he's cutting back on his drinking, but I'm not saying he drinks a lot, but there's no way that you can look at this, look at the fact that there are no audits, look at the disarray of everything, look at the many infractions, look at the management turnover, look at all the defects in all the records, and say, nothing to see here. You know, it's not like
Seems all right.
No, it's not like the Russians and the Chinese and others could take advantage of somebody who was dumb enough to operate it using non-secure devices, private servers, you know, protected by the Secret Service. You know, it's not like people weren't swarming all over this mess trying to exploit it while she was Secretary of State and afterwards.
I mean, didn't Comey even say in either his congressional testimony or some other time that it was very likely that multiple foreign actors had hacked the private server?
Right, and so that's why, you know, the second special counsel, Mr. President, I mean, hop to it. Rat Rodenstein needs to go yesterday. You know, a second special counsel needs to be brought in here. Maybe there should be congressional hearings. I don't know if those make sense or don't make sense. But at a minimum, there has to be a second special counsel. Gone on way too long here.
I hope they pick Larry Klayman because he would kick ass.
I think that's pronounced yes.
Yes. Right. All right. More on this slide, or?
We're done?
You're supposed to say, who are you calling a moron?
All right, so just to refresh people's memory, the Clinton-controlled IRS never should have allowed the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation to actually get federal tax exemption. All right, if we hit this, I don't know if this is going to come up, the second one here. This is a previous presentation. We'll see if it works. The magic of Google. Yeah, okay, now let's go in a few pages there. There's a table. Keep going, keep going.
Did you get this by searching for it on the playlist, Charles?
I just, actually, no.
Okay.
But, well, we talked to you before about mail fraud and why this is a very important presentation, I would argue. People should go back over it. If you,
which is this from? Which one?
This is the April 8th, I think it is. If you go back to the first page,
we can get the title of it.
Yeah, it's the Clinton post office box only rings twice.
Right.
April 8th. So, yeah, if you're prepared to cheat, what you do is you create an organization, but you don't register it properly in every jurisdiction where you're going to operate. And you find a crooked banker, in this case I think it was Bank of America, who is willing to look the other way on rules and let you collect money in multiple states, multiple different addresses, multiple accounts. You get a crooked accounting firm, BKD, you know, notorious BKD, to in theory do an audit, but not to check anything. And now you have streams of money headed towards your foundation, and the ability to divert those streams, you know, these multiple bank accounts that you've set up all over the place, that then you can take that money and you can either pay yourselves off, you can use it for campaigns, you can silence critics, you can do whatever you want. And there are just so many different signs that that's in fact what they did. When you read these technical rules, when you want to get a post office box for a corporation as distinct for an individual, there's special evidence you have to provide. You have to have the equivalent of a social security number, which is called an employer identification number, to get that post office box. Well, they set up...
And a bank account.
And a bank. So the Clinton Foundation was set up on October 23rd, 1997. When they filed their application for federal tax exemption on December 23rd, 2 months later, they claimed they didn't have an employer identification number.
So I don't understand how you could even get a bank account without...
Right, so it's just, we will be doing this in the type of detail that is required, but I could tell you that no experienced lawyer, accountant, analyst would look at this track record and say, yeah, this is just hunky-dory, this is the right way to do it. You know, you lie in the application, you don't disclose all kinds of conflicts in the application, you don't disclose that one of the reasons you're doing this is you've got a rising problem with Monica Lewinsky. This is happening just in this time frame. Remember, Monica Lewinsky's role with Bill Clinton became known in January of 1998. Bill is testifying. People are testifying about the whole Lewinsky scandal exactly as they are putting this Clinton Foundation together. The former legal expense trust used to raise, the first one to try to raise money to pay off these legal bills, had to be wound down precisely when they were doing all this. You know, it's just so crystal clear and obvious that this thing, the Clinton Foundation, was nothing more than a ruse.
Yeah.
Because they didn't even start construction on anything until 2001, right? So why did they need this? Why did they set it up in the way they set it up? I think, you know, had Rat Rodenstein done his work properly and James Comey done their work properly, they would have seen this early in 2001. It would have taken them a week.
Well, of course, doing their work properly in this context meant covering it up and make sure nobody actually did anything to find out what happened, as it were.
So if we go back into the more recent slide, I talked about the post office issue, and this is the what's called a termination letter that explains in crystal clear terms. Next page, I think it is.
They were certainly determined to steal a lot of money, Charles.
Yeah, it says, I think the next page after that.
This is page 4, I think.
3. Let's keep going. Well, if we go back into the body of the thing, I lifted the text. That's this here. If you change your sources of support, so you submit an application for federal tax exemption, and in it you have to, under penalties of perjury, the people who submit the application say, this is what we're going to do, right? And the IRS says, okay, if that's what you're going to do, based on your application, we'll give you federal tax exemption. But if you change your organizational document, you've got to tell us immediately. You change your articles of incorporation. They didn't do that. You change your bylaws, got to tell them. Didn't do that. But also let us know all changes. Doesn't say some changes. All changes in your name or address. They made multiple changes in their name. And that's how you create this laundry. You know, if you say to one person your name is the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, but somebody else is the William Jefferson Clinton Presidential Foundation, and people aren't careful, then you can have money sent to this thing over here that's not a charity, and you can steal that money because you're in league with your crooked accountants and your crooked trustees and your crooked executives. And you know, all this happening under the nose of dopey James Comey and Robert Mueller and Rat Rodenstein. I mean, it's just, at a certain point, and Donald Trump is smarter than this. I mean, he's been through allegations of trouble at his own foundation, but beyond that, he's been through complex financings, complex construction projects, and you know, charities are places where you can have fraud, but construction is well known as a zone where fraud regularly occurs. How are you going to check and make sure that, you know, so many yards of cement actually went into the foundation or into the wall or whatever, you know, tons of gravel, or you're not going to check that, or how many, you know, miles of electrical wire. You won't be able to check it.
Charles, is it possible that Donald Trump is acting in a very strategic manner where his first goal is to get past the midterm elections and retain a Republican House, and then his next goal is to make sure that he gets reelected so that when he's in his second term, he can take some of these more radical actions? Because we see what his challengers are bringing against him, and if he's unable to get to these milestones in his presidency, perhaps he'll be unable to do these things.
Well, I think he's very much focused on getting the Supreme Court to a 5-4 level, and that could happen in the next 2 weeks. Beyond that, the election, I take that point, but I certainly hope he's not assuming that, you know, he'll have until 2 years from now to try to go after the Clinton Foundation. I mean, the Clinton Foundation is a clear and present danger to many people in many vulnerable countries around the world. They should not be allowed to distribute the drugs that they're delivering unsupervised. They should not be allowed to concoct these crooked climate deals around the world. And they've got to correct their forms. They haven't done any of that. You can't let this go forever. So yeah, I think certainly he's thinking strategically, but it's just crystal clear. The crowd gets it. You know, no one has sent me yet any sort of analysis that says, Charles, you're wrong because you missed this. Right?
No, people send things that are like, this guy is full of BS. But it's like, hey, good argument.
So I saw, we can go to the next page. Yeah, I saw Chris Farrell on I think he was on Lou Dobbs. It was replayed this morning very early when I was watching it.
Oh, yeah.
But they are now, this Judicial Watch is a fantastic organization, and they are now hot on the trail of this Aberdeen Wiener laptop. They have not been given, they were promised the emails that were supposedly on it. They were only given a fraction of the ones that they were promised. They've been at this now for 2 years requesting this stuff. It's ridiculous.
There should be some sort of penalty where if you get a judgment that says you have to turn something over and then you make a claim like, oh, there was a computer glitch, if there's not, that should be perjury, that should be obstruction of justice. People should be fearful of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and evidently they're not. But good on Judicial Watch for going hell-bent for leather on this. And
hell-bent for leather. Nice, Charles. I never heard that before. That sounds like a weird movie.
Yeah, filmed in the West Village. But
exactly.
now, Devin Nunes has, he was on, I think, a show today or maybe yesterday, basically saying he knows what's in these emails.
He's great. Devin Nunes is a guy who has come to the public attention. I'll vote for him for something if I get the chance.
Yeah, and I love the way the elites, the supposed elites, look down the nose at this guy because he's a dairy farmer. You know, what kind of an idiot would be a dairy? It's tough to be a dairy farmer, especially in California.
Well, he's a politician now.
No, this is a guy who's taken a lot of incoming for pursuing this in the very beginning. You've got Shifty Adam Schiff and his Senate, senior senator Dianne Not-So-Feinstein giving this guy a hard time. But I think he's been proven right on almost
everything he's brought up.
Yeah, and he deserved, if this were Ted Kennedy, you know, or Dick Durbin or John Kerry, he'd be lionizing this guy. He's a patriot. He's speaking truth to power. He's taking on the deep state, but no, he's a dairy farmer from California, a Republican. We've got to give him a hard time. I believe he is Hispanic as well.
Well, Nunes, I would think so, but I guess unless you're a lawyer, a rapist, or driving women to their death off bridges, you don't cut the mustard in Congress.
Right. Amazing.
It's quite a disturbing situation there, but I like Devin Nunes.
Yeah. Now, this, if we could just hit, I don't know if it'll punch up and interrupt the program, but this is a 10-minute or 12-minute thing of the great James O'Keefe, who is announcing, and he actually gives a shout out multiple times in that to Laura Loomer, actually.
Yeah, well, Laura used to work for Project Veritas.
Right. And so
she remains good friends with James. That's how I met him.
Yeah, I've met him. He's a good guy. So, and a good team. But he has just announced, I guess, in recent days that they've completed about a 6-month investigation where they're going to name names and show videos of deep state actors bragging about what they're doing to, resist and obstruct the Trump agenda. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of howling and screaming about it, but this is coming out, I believe, soon. Like this.
Yeah, I got an email from them. It's coming any day. And of course, James is a guy who's come under fire, lawfare style allegations against him and public smears against his integrity. But as you've said, he is a great guy, and he's done tremendous, tremendous work with Project Veritas.
And then we have this WikiLeaks thing. I don't know this freedomnewsreport.com, but when you read this long thing carefully, it seems as if they're alleging, and it's gotten a fair amount of traffic, that WikiLeaks is going to maybe, if you believe this, is going to provide evidence by October 21st of Hillary Clinton committing treason.
Good. I hope so. There was a guy who, I think it's somewhat misreported that he was, part of WikiLeaks. He wasn't necessarily part of WikiLeaks, but he had written a document about ways that journalists can protect themselves from cyber intrusions and things like that. So he's kind of, of the same ilk as WikiLeaks, and I'd like to think that we are too, speaking truth to power and all that. And the guy has gone missing.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Right, but I just wanted to add that it doesn't seem like he was directly part of the WikiLeaks team, but maybe loosely affiliated with them, aware of them and everything. So this is exciting. Halloween may come early.
Exactly.
For Hillary Clinton. I wonder what she'll dress as in prison.
Yeah. This Canada Free Press is this one here. Is a website, obviously in Canada, that actually has some very important reporting. And I know we won't mention the name of the person, but I know somebody who was involved trying to help set that thing up. This is that controversial Toronto mayor's brother, who's now the Premier of Ontario, and already taking some great strides against the Trudeau allies in Ontario. Ontario being a pretty important province within all of Canada. And there's a feeling that if Ford continues to make progress, and as Trudeau continues to stumble, that there could well be a shifting, tectonic plate shifting in Canada. Trudeau and his foreign minister have apparently decided that, that Trump's not going to do well in the midterms, and therefore they may or may not care so much to work out a trade deal in Canada prior to the midterms. That will be yet another stunning miscalculation, I think, if they do that. But this is a bright spot. This Ford family, I guess, are controversial people. I wonder what the...
Well, the brother was a crack addict. I mean, this guy...
And mayor.
Right, smoking crack in the mayor's office and like with hip-hop artists on video, smoking crack. It's like, dude, what is the matter with you? But this guy definitely looks like the non-crack addicted, definitely healthier version of the same guy.
One hopes.
Hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, that's crazy that dude was a crack addicted mayor.
No.
So
this
maybe
is
he knows Marion Barry.
Yeah. This is an interview I did. I think it was my 68th or 69th interview with Katja Blanova. And I've been, early on, I began commenting about economics and politics in 2008. And by, I think, 2011, I was pounding the table that the European Union is a disaster. It's a fiction that there's any kind of unified market in Europe. It's just yet another gigantic bureaucracy. And I actually suggested that Germany should leave the European Union back in 2000, I think it was 11, it might have been 13, I'd have to check my notes. But this is a piece that Katja put out. What she does is she sends me a list of questions and I try to answer them, and then she takes some of my answers and weaves a story together. And I'm very satisfied with her work. She did a similar thing with Biljana in Sweden. And Jan has done interviews with her as well. And I actually find the interviews that she does and other Sputnik people do to be quite illuminating. And you'd like to see more of that in the New York Times and places like that, but I've given up on the New York Times and even recently on the Wall Street Journal. It's just they're not doing the type of skeptical, in-depth, anti-globalist. They're not looking at globalism properly because these big...
They're owned by globalists.
Right, that's how they roll.
They're globalist newsletters.
Right.
I mean, the New York Times is more likely to accuse you of collusion for being interviewed by Sputnik than they are to do a legitimate interview with you.
Right, right. Although the one time I was interviewed, they did do a decent interview back. But anyway, we're on this one here. I don't know if Peter is Christopher Hitchens' relation or not, but here's somebody writing for the Daily Mail, warning that we're once again on the brink of another war. And when you think about it, what's going on in the Middle East, you've got Iran unrepentant, you've got Saudi Arabia thinking they had their act in gear on the Aramco offering, but that didn't work out so well.
Didn't it fall apart?
It's fallen apart. You have continued mayhem in Yemen, you've got the situation in Syria, you've got Libya, and we're now, 17 years into Middle Eastern entanglements and Afghanistani entanglements, and we don't really have a lot to show for it that's positive.
No.
And 17 years is a very long time to be at war. And it's certainly, people always talk about what the founders wanted this and the founders wanted that. The founders wanted the people closest to, the representatives closest to the people to be the ones declaring war. They wanted the House of Representatives to actually, had to face their electorate every 2 years. They wanted them to be the ones who would debate whether we go to war or not go to war. We seem to be sliding into yet another war. And this could be an issue, actually, that would unite conservatives and progressives, because anybody who knows anything about war knows that you do it as a last resort. You don't just do it because it's going to make Northrop a lot of money, or GE a lot of money, or cronies a lot of money. War is a horrible thing, and the people who are in the military and know about it know about just how costly war is in terms, not simply the deaths, which are horrific. It's in some ways it's worse, the damage that is done to bodies and minds,
families,
and families, extended families. So we should be having a much tougher conversation about holding our military and our deep state to account for these various battles we have around the world. When we go and we think through how many bases the United States has around the world and how many different countries, and then who's next. I mean, there's very few countries that come remotely close to the spread of our...
I think it's like 8 is the second. We have like hundreds, and then the next highest is like 8.
Right. And so, it's fair. I think that you want an issue that brings the political spectrum potentially together. There's one. You know,
I was watching a lot of stuff over the past week, Charles, about SEC investigations into some of the financial transactions that took place on the day before in the run-up to September 11th, 2001. And I don't think I knew this, but there are multiple international and SEC and other reports that say that there's conclusive evidence that there was foreknowledge of the attacks and that people were trading on that. And this whole thing with P-Tech and this, I mean, it's like, it's amazing the amount of money that was made on the knowledge that the World Trade Center would collapse, investments in Raytheon, puts on United and American, and all this. It's like, that can't be a coincidence.
Yeah,
something worth looking at perhaps for next September 11th.
Yeah, and I don't want to give Bill Kristol the benefit of a link here, but I mean, the guy should just, he's a supposed Republican. He was chief of staff to Dan Quayle. Need I say more?
Learning how to spell potato.
Right, and he's now, this is a story about how he's going to put together, quote, a war machine to tackle Trump in the 20s. This guy really needs to hang it up.
What happened to the days, I thought if you even made a joke about attacking the president, that the Secret Service was supposed to come visit you. What is up with all these people assembling war chests and resisting and writing articles about taking things off the president's desk?
It's outrageous.
It's totally okay.
And Thomas Lifson is the guy who runs American Thinker. He's a very smart man, and I commend American Thinker too, not just because I occasionally write for them, but there's a lot of thoughtful work comes out of American Thinker, and not many sensible thoughts come out of the mouth of Bill Kristol anymore.
But this, I guess, is a good opportunity to show that to people.
Yeah. Now, this is a fun one. I talked to you privately, Jason. I'm going to talk to the crowd about the fun and joy of collecting first edition books. And I was looking at some accounting questions on this, and I happened to get to this story here in CNBC. It's a lengthy story that talks through why it is that, in particular, first edition books can be so valuable. And in this era where more and more people are reading electronically and not actually buying books, because there are more and more people today. I think back in if I get my facts right, 1980, I believe the American population was 195 million or so.
1980?
1980. I may have that wrong. Maybe it's less than that. Now we're up at like where are we now? We're now at 320.
Whoa.
You know? So, and also the composition of the population is very different. It used to be that there were more young, in 1980 there were more young people, fewer older people. Now we've got, as a percentage of the total, not so many young people and a lot of older people. So what does this all mean for books? It means that there are many more potential collectors for a declining percentage of books, hard copy books that are out there. And that's a perfect market scenario where you see constrained supply and potentially increasing demand. So these books that just a brief side note on it, when I was working for Dillon Read in the merger and acquisition department, we weren't allowed to read business materials on the plane, and I spent most of my time flying around.
Why is that?
Because you never know who you're sitting next to, and so you open your briefcase and you got something. So what I got in the business of doing after I started making a bit of money, I'd stop buying paperbacks, and I just every week, I like bookstores, so I'd go to a bookstore and I just fill my briefcase up with books. And I had read a lot of the serious history and fiction and stuff like that, but I had not really read that much in the way of spy novels. So I just became interested in reading spy novels, and I thought nothing of it. You know, I didn't even realize necessarily I was buying first editions, but that's all that I bought for like 20 years. And if you read as much as I was reading,
Strand?
No. I would go to then they had Doubleday, the bookstore, and I was paying top dollar for these.
There's a lot less bookstores now than there were in the 80s as well.
So if you want, most of us, maybe you don't, Jason, but many people have far more books than they think they actually have. They're put away in cupboards, they're in storage or whatever. And
mine are all right.
Well, you've
here.
got a bunch there, yeah. Those are mostly first editions, by the way.
That's true, and signed by the authors.
Well, those are valuable. Right?
There you go.
And so you want to make sure that you put them away, and if you like them.
Well, I'm going to keep those because most of those books were given to me by the authors who, in many cases, are now personal friends.
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps when I'm dead and gone, those books will be.
Yeah.
People say these are the books that sat on the table on Sunday with Charles.
There you go. There you go. And so that's just, I always like to try to end with something that's interesting. You may have, there could be gold in your bookshelves.
Are we at the end?
Almost here. We have this story, we commented on it on Wednesday, this solar observatory.
Yes,
that
very
was
odd.
Just, apparently helicopters came in and FBI came in and they just took everybody out of this place. And now the internet is swarming with theories of what's really going on here. And I don't actually have a theory, but I know you like.
I don't have a theory either. I haven't been that dialed into this other than to be aware. I mean, it seems strange to me that the FBI and law enforcement would evacuate a scientific facility like this that probably has gotten more attention in the past week than since it was constructed. But what is this solar, it's viewing mass coronal ejections and solar storms and things like that, right?
Yeah, apparently, in New Mexico somewhere.
I think people are speculating that there's aliens coming, and somebody played a video of a aircraft carrier with a triangular thing on it that people said was a UFO. But then, of course, well,
Probably wasn't.
I mean, it's the easiest possible thing to fake, to put an aircraft on the surface of a to insert some visual effects item like that into a video. And then to debunk that, someone showed a video, the same video of the aircraft carrier without that UFO there, which is a good first step. But again, we can't, deception is so insidious. Someone could have taken a video with a UFO in it and then done visual effects to remove the UFO. So really what someone should do if they want to debunk that video is they should very carefully watch it frame by frame. And as the camera zooms and moves and as the focus changes, they should observe that UFO and see how it behaves when camera moves happen. And if there's even 1 pixel of deviation, that might not be immediately obvious to someone just viewing it, but if you can detect any changes in that aren't happening in the background video, that would be a good indication that it's a visual effects item that's been inserted. The zooming and the focus changes being the most obvious of those. There were a couple last-minute things that had come to our attention, Charles, but I think I've we've spoken about, okay, we got that one. This Free Republic one, did we want that?
Well, that's a joke. Is that a joke?
I think it might have been a joke. Yeah, let's just get to a shot here where we can figure out which ones we want to show. So, okay, here we go. This was one of them that you wanted to talk about.
Well, we talked about that. That's the...
Oh, yeah. So then we're through these. We've got them. All right. Well, very good, Charles. Another excellent episode. I remain staggered by the criminal activity of some of these people. And look at that. We're coming in under the 2-hour mark.
I know.
So people can still enjoy the remainder of summer. Thank you again, Charles. This has been certainly the good, the bad. There wasn't much good, though. It's mostly the bad and the fugly.
Well, I think the good is that the table has been set here for, you know, a 99 course meal where, or more, where prosecutors inside and outside the United States can finally bring these Clintons and their co-conspirators to justice. And I can tell you that I'm hearing from multiple sources that eyes are very much focused on this program and on the progress that is happening, I think, in grand jury rooms and their equivalent around the world. So the Clintons, I would guess, are having a very hard time getting a real accountant to...
well, no one would touch this. No legitimate accountant would.
At this point. So that's got to be an issue. The rich trustees, you know, the dam has got to, the penny's got to drop for the rich, some of these rich trustees, that the Clintons are never going to be in power again. And so, you know, why do you want to do them a solid, you know, with your billions? You really want to say, oh yeah, I'll lose a couple billion to protect these schlubs because they've looked after me so carefully? I don't think so.
Next conversation is going to be through a piece of glass.
Exactly.
You know, you're talking about grand juries, Charles. That causes me to remember I'm going to be meeting with Michael Moore, of course, formerly known as Thomas.
Not the big one.
Not the filmmaker, who I have met downtown at the premiere of his film about Trumpland. One of the very first things I did on Crowdsource the Truth was HRC voters in Trumpland, and then I met one of the guys who I randomly interviewed on the street when Laura Loomer and I went to the James Comey book signing, so that was weird. But the thing I wanted to tell you about is I'm going to be meeting with Michael Moore later today, and we're going to be doing a special episode of our new, only on Patreon series, More Pain. Of course, Michael Moore is the journalist formerly known as Thomas Paine of True Pundit, and we all know that Larry Klayman succeeded in his FOIA lawsuit. Judge Emmett Sullivan found in Larry's favor and issued a verdict that the special counsel's office needed to turn over all of their communications with the press to Larry by September 4th. Now, when September 4th arrived, Mueller's office claimed that there was a computer glitch that prevented them from providing these documents and that they needed more time. And now that second date has arrived and they have provided more of the documents, but Larry tells me there's quite a bit of information missing from that. So Michael and I are going to be having a special episode tonight, and people can catch that by going to patreon.com/truepundit or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You become a sponsor of either of those two Patreon pages, and people will get that exclusive live stream tonight and every week. More Pain is normally on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. and we will be having another episode where we'll go in depth on some of these FOIA documents. Haven't been seen by the public yet. And Larry is going to be working with myself and True Pundit and Michael Moore to bring that information out. We're going to be looking to the crowd to pour over that stuff. It's very clear that Mueller's team is, you know, doing the minimum required to fulfill that judgment. And this is part of the reason why I say there's got to be stronger penalties for people who defy these judgments and take what are very obvious steps to stymie what Larry is trying to do. Larry is very suspicious that the special counsel's office has been leaking grand jury information to the press for politically strategic reasons, to achieve their goals, to obstruct the election of Democrats who would tilt the House in the favor of President Trump. And you know, these are things that go by the public's attention without being noticed, but this is an insidious attack on the presidency. So hopefully people will tune in, and hopefully people will sponsor the program by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Even if you're watching here on YouTube, it's very important that people sponsor the show, because we never know when the rug's going to get pulled out from under us. There are obviously insidious individuals around the internet who are working to take advantage of the weak elements in YouTube's structure to try and strike the videos and put out false information, do all kinds of crazy things. So we'll be back on Wednesday, right? Oh no, this Wednesday we're not going to be doing a closing in, is that right?
No, that's right. That's right.
So we'll be back next Sunday. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank you, of course, Charles. And we'll be back tonight at 7:30 with a special episode of More Pain, only on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everybody.